This is CNN and Company with Mary Tillotson.
Thanks very much for being with us. President Clinton has just finished a Labor Day speech to shipyard workers at Bath, Maine. Mr. Clinton, of course, isn't the only politician out talking to voters today, since Labor Day is the traditional kickoff of the fall campaign season. This year's midterm election has Republicans licking their chops at the prospect of big wins in the House and Senate. And here to talk about the political landscape heading into the fall, our Republican consultant, Maureen Reagan. Jane Norris, who is a radio talk show host at WHAS in Louisville, Kentucky, and Susan Page, White House correspondent for Newsday. Very glad all three of you interrupted what might have been a holiday for you to come in. Let's start. Quick prediction, yes or no from each of you. Maureen, are the Republicans going to take enough seats to take control of the Senate?
I think it's going to be close. I hope so, but I'm not positive.
That's a maybe. Jane?
I think yes. I would say more definitely yes. There's a mood out there for change.
Susan?
I would say the Democrats are going to lose effective control of the Senate. Whether or not they lose numerical control is a little less clear.
Whether it's that 7 net seats gained that they need to actually have a majority leader. A question to Susan to kick it off. Was there any irony, sort of sad from the president's point of view, that he chose Maine to make this speech when Maine, given George Mitchell's retirement, is one of those very Democratic Senate seats that's now in trouble?
Yeah, it is in trouble. At the moment, Olympia Snowe, the popular woman, Republican congresswoman, is seen to be leading Tom Andrews, who is the Democratic challenger there. And it's one of several trouble spots for Democrats across the country. There are perhaps 9 Democratic-held Senate seats that now look like they're either Democrats are behind or they're up for grabs.
To Jane, it's almost a microcosm of the trouble that Mr. Clinton's party is in that he was plugging Tom Andrews, the Democratic candidate, 2 or 3 times in his speech in Bath today. There's a New York Times piece today quoting some folks in Andrews' campaign suggesting perhaps they would have preferred Mr. Clinton not to come.
Isn't that a sad commentary on the presidency? And that's happening all across the country, even in Kentucky, where we saw an unprecedented win for Ron Lewis, who a seat that was held by Democrats for a long time suddenly turned over to a Democratic victory. So, I mean, a Republican victory. So you see, I think, a mood for change in this country, much the same mood that swept President Clinton into the presidency, is sweeping through the electorate for the coming elections in November.
And to stick with the irony theme with Jane just a moment longer, one of the ironies I have to believe is that George Mitchell decided to sit there, not take a Supreme Court job or any other job, to try and get a health care package through, and it now looks as if the major health care reform is dead for this year, doesn't it?
I don't know if major health care reform is dead for this year. I think they're going to come back again in the next session of Congress and debate it once more. I think they're going to take the pulse of a lot of the people around the country about health care reform and see whether or not the people of the United States can tolerate that kind of, well, basically what amounts to an increase in taxes.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think that with the Congress that we're going to get after this November election, we're going to have trouble. The Congress and the President are going to have trouble getting any legislation through except perhaps welfare reform. I think we're looking at 2 years of political posturing and gridlock the second 2 years of President Clinton's term, because the Congress is going to be so closely divided, it's going to be difficult to get anything done.
Let's let Maureen in. She has been uncharacteristically quiet.
Maureen, Olympia.
If your dad had the great good fortune to be considered the Teflon president, which he was when he was in the White House for 12 years, could it be said of Mr. Clinton, and this is not my line, it's somebody else's, but I thought it was fairly brilliant, that he is the Velcro president?
It's probably true. I think going back to what you said earlier, though, Mary, it really
I was just told, I said Reagan was in the White House 12 years, and it only seemed like that. George Bush served the last 4, I think. Go ahead.
Believe me, it didn't seem like 12 to us. Going back to what you said before, good policy makes good politics. And one of the reasons I think that the Democrats are trying to distance themselves from the administration is that there have been so many times when they've been cut off at the knees by the policies of this administration. And I give you as a perfect example what's happened with the People's Republic of China. There are a number of Democrats in the Congress from here in California who have taken very strong stands against the human rights abuses in China, and they have been been effectively cut off by the administration, who told them, well, just wait and we'll take care of it, and of course they didn't. And it's been that kind of thing over and over and over again, which has now caused this division in their own party.
To Maureen, though, don't Republicans run their own risk in these elections that are coming up? Because you know the Democrats are going to tag them as having been obstructionist on health care, obstructionist on welfare reform. I mean, the electorate, as far as I understand it, is down on incumbents, and there just happen to be more Democratic incumbents this time around. It's not as if the Republicans get off scot-free, is it?
Well, that's very true, but basically, if you go back to the words of Will Rogers, who said the country's never safe when Congress is in session, I'm looking for a bumper sticker that says, God bless gridlock.
I think she's right. I really believe that the American people don't perceive gridlock at this stage of the game as obstructionist. I think they view it more as a decision on the part of the Republicans to block policies that they view as unpopular with the American people. That's not obstructionist.
Well, let's also say this, though, and Susan, I'll let you in on this one, that even though the latest CNN poll we did, and we can show you these numbers, show Mr. Clinton at his lowest approval rating yet, 40%. Who approve of his job performance versus 52% who do not. That's even 40% less than he won when he was elected. To Susan, at this same stage in Ronald Reagan's first term, two of them 8 years, right, Maureen? And at this same stage in George Bush's term, when he was riding high on the Gulf War, everything looked very different than it did a couple of years down the road. It's a little early to count Clinton out of 96.
It's early, although I'll tell you, there's something that is very troubling, I know, to the White House, and that is this is a time when the economy is doing pretty well, and the president has just gotten what I think fairly could be described as a big victory on the crime bill, and still his approval ratings show this kind of dismal performance. If that's the case, under what circumstances do Clinton's approval ratings look good? That's what's really troubling the White House, and that's one of the things that's making their calculations for the '96 re-election more difficult. Now, with President Reagan 2 years into his first term, he was in the midst of a recession. His numbers were down, but that was explicable. These numbers are less understandable and more troubling.
Because there's not that, you're suggesting at least the economic justification for that low rate.
Right, the economy's pretty good. He's had some legislative victories. We're not involved in a war abroad. I mean, by contemporary conventional standards, his approval ratings ought to look better than this.
To Maureen, I want to talk about the Catholic Church. We've got the population conference that started in Cairo, Egypt today. It was a highly unusual attack by the Catholic Church over the abortion issue on the Clinton administration. I'm back to the Velcro issue. I mean, didn't it strike you as unusual that the Vatican would attack by name Vice President Gore?
Yes, I do, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense unless you realize that the majority of the developing countries, which make up most of the countries in the world, are controlled either by the Catholic Church or by Islamic fundamentalism. And when you look at that, you realize that abortion is a non-starter on the international scene. It always has been. It's a sop that is sometimes given to the Western countries in order to get something else in the document. We went through this 10 years ago. But the thing that is a problem to me is I think that the Catholic Church has taken this position on abortion to cover up the fact that they are really fighting against birth control, which is a part of how we control the population.
Not abortion, but contraception.
That's right.
And to Jane, while I know that there are staunch Catholics who agree with the Pope, I think if you were an American president where abortion is legal and where most polls show that even if you don't like abortion, you want it to be out there as an option for other people, that the Clinton administration is reflecting the wish of the majority of the American constituency.
Well, that's what they say. That's what Al Gore said on one of the...
That's what the polls say, too.
Well, that's what he said on one of the chat shows earlier this weekend. But I have to tell you, there was not only an attack on the policies that the United States is putting forward at this conference in Cairo, but there was also an attack on the president's the administration's moral leadership for the country. The Catholic Church came out very strongly and said that there's a tone in these papers that we don't agree with. There's a promiscuity tone that we don't agree with. And I think that's something, an undercurrent, that could have something to do with the ratings, the polls that you're seeing, the negative results you're seeing for President Clinton.
Well, Susan, I would think there might also be a negative result for the Catholic Church in the United States. They have problems with their own parishioners who don't want politics intruded on their religion, don't they?
That may be true, and in addition, I think there's some feeling that the abortion issue, which is very inflammatory, about which people feel very strongly on both sides, has overshadowed some other issues that are also very important. For instance, the Clinton administration and the Catholic Church have some agreement on social justice issues, greater agreement than they had with the Bush administration or the Reagan administration. That's really been overshadowed in this debate. What's more, the Cairo document, which includes some very controversial language on issues of birth control and abortion, also includes some groundbreaking developments in terms of looking at population control more broadly, looking at calling for the equal education of girls and calling for the empowerment of women as ways to control family size. All that's been overshadowed, I think, by this dispute over abortion.
Regrettable. We're going to take a break. There's certainly some other stories happening overseas that are reflected in domestic politics for Mr. Clinton, including Cuba and Haiti policy. We'll talk about it next. Stay with us.
Fruit and Fiber has a great new taste, and we just can't keep it under wraps.
I got a great new taste.
Now with crispy multigrain flakes.
I got a great new taste.
More raisins, more walnuts, more dates.
Got a lot of great new taste.
And oat clusters with a touch of brown sugar.
Oh yeah, I got a great new taste.
A new taste so delicious, it shows. The new Post Fruit and Fiber cereal. It's fruit and fiber.
And a great new taste.
When young policyholders come to me, I look at them and think, boy, that was me 15 years ago. I remember very well how quickly things changed for Debbie and me. Marriage, children, our first house. It's exactly why State Farm's family insurance checkups are such a good idea. Your agent helps you put it all in perspective so you can make the right decisions. The way you were 5 years ago is not the way you are today. It's comforting to me when I can say to my policyholders, hey, I've been there.
State Farm is there.
When we went to Ohio on August 4th, we didn't let the rain stop us from surprising our new millionaire.
Let's go. Is Joyce here? We're the prize patrol from Publishers Clearing.
Oh my, I don't believe it.
You just won $1 million.
I watched it on TV and those people always look like they're really surprised. I just don't know what to say. I think I'm going to faint.
She promised to share it with her friends and relatives.
We're the prize patrol from Publishers Clearinghouse, and we could surprise you next.
American heroes we can't get enough of. Moments we can't forget. Watch the world premiere of an unprecedented television event. The TNT original, 75 seasons, the story of the National Football League. Premieres Tuesday, September 13th, only on TNT.
I think if you're going to sequester the jury at all, you might as well go the whole way. Put them in a hotel where you can control what they read and watch and are exposed to.
Most people don't want to be sequestered for a lengthy trial. It's a tremendous sacrifice. You also tend to get a jury that is not so much a cross-section of the population because it's the unusual kind of person who is able to make that kind of sacrifice.
All dairies go a long way to meet high industry standards. But Quality Checked goes further, which is why more people are coming up to the fresher taste of Quality Check. Look for these dairies with a check in the queue, where higher standards mean fresh taste.
Now just because you wear lipstick doesn't mean he has to.
Revlon creates new Color Stay, color that stays on your lips all day.
And won't kiss off on him.
Revlon Color Stay, color that sets in 60 seconds for all-day wear.
Because a woman should always make her mark, but not with her lipstick.
Revolutionary Color Stay lip color.
Revlon.
Is your credit report holding you back from refinancing your home? Hi, I'm Jim Palmer. Well, if it is, call the Money Store. At the Money Store, they'll treat you like an individual and look at your total credit history, not just today's credit report. You can apply entirely by phone at the Money Store, and there's never an application fee. So don't let your credit report stop you from refinancing your first mortgage. Call 1-800-LOAN-YES, the Money Store, where America goes for money.
Before O.J. Simpson, Jean Harris was at the center of her own high-profile murder trial. Meet the woman convicted of killing the Scarsdale diet author on Larry King Live tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back. We've got a few minutes left, starting with Susan, who's covering the Clinton White House. I think one of the reasons for Mr. Clinton's approval ratings dipping down is that folks think his foreign policy amounts to a game of checkers rather than a game of chess where he is thinking strategically 5 or 6 moves down the road. Cuba policy right now has been on and off again and back and forth, and does it look as if they're at a stalemate in those talks in New York?
Well, his discussions with policy toward Cuba has been like his policy toward several other places. It's been reactive, and it seemed to be very short term instead of long term.
In hours rather than days.
That's right. And the policy with Cuba, in addition, has raised, I think, a fundamental question, which is, with the end of the Cold War, why do we treat Cuba so differently from how we treat other places? We're talking with North Korea. We're sending aid to Russia.
Well, the New York Times, I'm going to interrupt you to get to this New York Times report today saying that the Cubans want the U.S. to let 100,000 legal Cuban immigrants into the U.S. The administration has said maybe 20,000, which is the number that came over here in August alone.
Right. And even 20,000 puts Cuba in a different category than any other nation in the world.
But if there's not some huge change, what's the incentive for Fidel to throw closed his doors? I mean, it's not to his disadvantage to keep them there, is it?
It's a very difficult situation, and as all these foreign policy problems, it's not as though any of them have easy answers, nor does this one.
Do you think, Maureen, that we are going to see an invasion of Haiti, and is that wrong-headed? And if we do, will it be only because Mr. Clinton has said we will?
Well, yes, if we invade, it will only because he said we will, which will be the first time that he ever did anything that he said he would do. But why in the world we're going to do it, I do not know. And what do we do when we get it? I mean, this is a situation of be careful what you wish for. There is absolutely no reason for us to invade Haiti. There's more reason for us to invade Cuba, but we shouldn't do that either. I don't understand. I truly do not understand where this policy is going, and I thank heavens that I am not in a situation of having to make lemonade out of lemons with this group.
To Jane, were you surprised at the copy over the weekend, unnamed administration officials in effect saying we will invade because Cedras is not going to get out?
Well, I'm not surprised, and that's the sad part about this whole commentary. President Clinton seems to not really have clear direction about foreign policy.
Do you expect an invasion?
I hope not. I hope, for the sake of the country, that we do not invade. We tried it once before, intervention in Haiti, and we stayed how long? 22 years? It didn't work the last time. I don't expect that it'll work this time. And the Cuban policy as well. I mean, we see piecemeal activity here instead of an overall immigration policy. You know, we also have a Mexican invasion happening in places like California that the president is not dealing with either.
Susan, what are you hearing from the folks you cover in the Clinton White House? Are they quietly telling you that there will be an invasion?
Well, there's a lot of talk at the State Department and the Pentagon that an invasion is all but inevitable. But, you know, that we haven't heard that from President Clinton yet, and I am not, I can't claim to know whether we're going to invade or not. My impression is that a final decision certainly hasn't been made. It won't be made until we hear from the president on this.
Who would support it if they do? I get the sense not his party, not the Republican Party, that nobody but the Congressional Black Caucus is pushing for this invasion.
And is this a political payback for the lack of a racial quota system in the crime bill? I certainly hope not.
Let's end this with some quick predictions. We'll do a nice little round show starting with the elections in the fall. We'll end with the elections in the fall. Maureen, predict your upset. Who is going to for example, is Kathleen Brown going to upset Pete Wilson? Will the Bush boys win their races in Texas and Florida? What's your prediction for an upset or a big surprise this November?
Well, I think the big surprise this November is going to be that we're not going to be as surprised, perhaps, as we think we are. It has been Kathleen Brown's race to lose ever since she started in California, and I think she may very well do that.
So you think Pete Wilson will stay as governor of California?
There's a very good chance of that.
You're upset or you're surprised, Jane?
Prediction. I think Governor Childs has a fight in front of him in the state of Florida. I think he may lose to Jeb Bush.
Which is, of course, why Mr. Clinton's trying to help him out with Cuban and Haiti policy. Susan, your prediction, upset.
My prediction is that the Republicans, who now hold 1 out of the 5 big state governorships set in California, at the end of this election will hold 4 of the 5. Democrats will hold only 1.
And you've got the last word. Appreciate all three of you being with us for a little bit shorter show because we wanted to listen to the president today, Maureen Reagan, Jane Norris, Susan Page. And we appreciate all of those of you out there who joined us, too. We hope the rest of your Labor Day holiday is just fine. I'm Mary Tillotson. Here's our Natalie Allen with a preview of what's up next. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thanks, Mary. At the top of the hour on NewsHour, President Clinton urges American bosses and workers to pull together for the common good. We'll have that story and other Labor Day developments. Plus, what is on this week's legal agenda in the O.J. Simpson case and the aftermath of a 10,000-foot plunge with a bum parachute. It's all next on NewsHour. Join us.
Today on Talkback Live, do we work to live or live to work? America on the Job. Today, 1 p.m. Eastern only on CNN.